In the competitive Pokemon TCG scene, there has always been an unofficial title of the player with the most regional championship wins. A lot of people make a big deal about it, and for the longest time, one of my friends and veteran players in the game, Michael Pramawat, held that record, with his 7th win coming at the Memphis Regional Championships back in 2018, where he actually defeated me in the finals in what on paper should have been a very favorable matchup for me. At that point, I had just won my 4th regional championships in San Jose with Night March in the expanded format only a month before, where I actually defeated Pram in top 4. You could say that after those two encounters, a sort of rivalry was developing between us. Had I won, I would have had 5 regional wins and he would have had 6, something that felt easily within reach, just 1 win away from equaling his record and 2 from surpassing him. But now, after my defeat, he had 7 and I had 4. I was 3 wins away from tying his record, and that felt almost impossible. Would I ever be able to catch up to someone that had been playing for far longer and had far more experience than me? My 5th regional win came 2 years later in the tag team era with Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team GX at the Atlantic City Regional in September of 2019. It was a great start to the cursed 2020 season, where I had to beat my friend and now teammate Grant Manley in the finals. Unfortunately, as we all know, the 2020 season got cut short and I wasn't able to add any more regional wins for a very, very long time. During the live events pause, I won the Players' Cup 3 Global Finals in April of 2021 with Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and once in-person play resumed in 2022, I didn't do too great at regionals overall. You could say I was in a little bit of a slump there, but I was able to finally break that and able to win the North American International Championships with Arceus V-Star and Flying Pikachu VMAX that season. I followed that up by winning the Oceania International Championships with Lost Box and placing top 4 with Mew VMAX at the World Championships during the 2023 season. But the closest I came to winning a regional was top 4 in both Salt Lake City and Milwaukee. I kept falling short at regionals, tournaments that should technically be easier to win than internationals, but my next win still eluded me. Maybe I didn't take them as seriously as I should have, or I didn't prepare well enough before them, unlike the international events. In order for this to change, I knew going into the 2024 season that I'd be attending all 12 North American regionals, as well as a European regional. Whilst I was still 2 away from equaling Pramawat's record, he hadn't added any wins to his record since our final match in 2018, and I wasn't even sure how much Pokemon he was playing these days. So 2024 was the perfect season for me to potentially catch up or even surpass him in the record. My 6th regional win came over 4 years after my previous one in December of 2023 at San Antonio.
Just needs balls in the hand!
Azul has it, and there you have it!
Brings up that Giratina, and AzulGG will be ahead on prize cards at the end of turn 3, and he becomes a 6-time regional champion here in San Antonio.
What a way to finish it off, Chip. Azul hitting that 6th regional win mark.
I had a crazy run of events where the stars aligned and I was playing some of the best Pokemon of my life. I got 3rd, 1st, and 7th in 3 back-to-back regional championships, all with the exact same deck, Charizard EX. The deck definitely felt very strong in the format, and that's why my group kept running at so many events in a row. During that 3-month period, I was very close to tying and possibly surpassing Pramawat's record over the course of those 3 events, and while a win felt amazing after so many years, it took me 4 years to win again. How many more years would it take me to get my 7th? Well, it wasn't even 6 months. Like I said before, this record isn't an official competition or title. It's just something people keep track of, especially if you're the one with the most wins, but it definitely lingered in the back of my mind how close I was now, and equaling his record or even surpassing it would definitely help cement my legacy in Pokemon TCG history. For the first time ever, I decided to fly to a regional outside North America. I would usually only do these longer trips for international competitions, but with the increased prize pool that season, as well as Stockholm being a pretty cool city, I decided to fly over and try my luck in the EU region, and it was completely worth it. I was able to get my 7th regional win with the very controversial Snorlax block deck. My first regional in Europe being my first win felt incredible, but above all, I did something that seemed unthinkable a few years back. I caught up. I had finally done it. I now had the same amount of regional wins as Michael Pramawat, making us co-regional title holders. But despite winning 2 regionals in 1 season and tying Pramawat's record, as well as recently getting top 4 at the World Championships in Japan, I was feeling burnt out on competing, and I knew I needed to change up how I approached competitions. Many of you might have heard about my group's elusive process of picking a deck for an event involving the spreadsheet. Normally during the season, a couple of days before each tournament, me and my group would run our spreadsheet and from there decide what kind of matchups or decks we want to work on, prioritizing what we expect to be the most popular decks to make sure we are heading into the field with a strong pick against the top played decks. Even if that means sacrificing a few of the less popular matchups along the way. Once we work on those for a few days and have more data, we would run the spreadsheet one more time and then settle on a final deck and 60 cards for the event. We did this for every single tournament all of us attended, and it seemed to work decently well. I had won 2 regional championships, had quite a few top 8s. Grant also had some top cuts, almost getting a top cut at NAIC. And Caleb had a good amount of solid finishes, as well as 2 finals in the post-COVID era. And while I was there for the team, sharing my thoughts and giving as much input as I could for what I knew and what I had tested up to that point, I wasn't overly motivated to put my all into every single tournament, and I knew I was capable of more. I just had to come up with a process that would allow me to unlock my full potential. Traveling to so many tournaments in such a short period of time took a toll on me on a personal level. I was not home very often. I also have other content commitments with my friend Chip and our Uncommon Energy project that had me going back and forth to his house in North Carolina. And after Sweden, I just knew something had to change. Thankfully, there were only 2 more tournaments to go, the Los Angeles Regional Championships and NAIC, before a 2-month break heading into the World Championships. However, I truly just wasn't feeling it anymore, and my prep for the 2 biggest and most prestigious tournaments of the season, NAIC and Worlds, was basically showing up. I had a mediocre finish at NAIC with a 5-3-1 record with Gardevoir EX, and despite the break between NAIC and Worlds, I just couldn't find the motivation or a way to stop feeling burnt out. At Worlds, our group decided to play Snorlax Stall, knowing it would have some very good and some very bad matchups. You could call it a matchup roulette deck, and I ended up losing my win into day 2 in a pretty unwinnable matchup against Ancient Box due to the Petron EX allowing my opponent to freely switch out each turn, making it impossible to block something in the active. After Worlds, the season picked back up almost immediately, and that's when I made one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make in my Pokemon TCG career. I would stop competing in every single major tournament. Instead, I want to try and tackle things a little bit differently this season. With the best finish limit of 5, I didn't feel like I needed to go to every single event to qualify for the World Championships anymore if that was the ultimate goal. And by being pickier on the events I go to, as well as significantly reducing all the constant traveling back and forth, I was hoping that would reinvigorate my desire to put more time into my preparation and try a lot harder for each major event I went to, as I would pick which ones I would go to based on whether I was really enjoying the format or I had a broken deck I wanted to play. With the full schedule available for all regions, I was contemplating if I wanted to attend any events in Europe or Latin America. At this point, winning another regional wasn't a priority simply because playing less this season, I would have less chances to win another one, but it was still something that deep down was part of what ultimately motivated me to have a more active second half of the season and continue to compete. From now on, my main approach to major events will be picking a deck or 2 that I want to play at a tournament and then get more knowledgeable on them on a more fundamental level through playing the decks on my stream for at least the week heading to the event. Not only would it be good content, I'm sure people would like to watch the process that I go through to refine and get better with a deck. Also, I was certain this would change how I felt about the deck I was playing in tournaments moving forward and would help me feel more prepared and comfortable and confident going into tournaments. My plan was to do this for the Merida Regional Championships, my second major tournament of the season, and the first with Prismatic Evolutions being legal for tournament play, meaning Badoo was on everyone's mind, including mine. My main goal for Merida was picking a deck that would allow me to finish 3 games as reasonably as possible by either winning quickly or losing quickly. This led me to Miraidon. Between the various threats available to the deck, making it versatile and adaptable, as well as the consistency that Secret Box provides to the deck, I thought it was a great pick heading into a format where the expected top decks were going to be Dragapult, Gardevoir, and Lugia. Unfortunately, before the tournament, I got sick. I went to record some content with my friend Chip and caught something on the way back home, so that ruined my plans to stream all week, and I was only able to stream one day, the Thursday before the event. With only a single day of preparation with this new process, I wasn't sure if it would even be worth it to go to Merida, and I did consider canceling my trip last minute because I wasn't able to execute my preparation plans as I had wanted to. However, things in life rarely go according to plan, and I had to start somewhere. So I locked in on Miraidon. I played with the deck for 8 hours straight on my live stream, working on the list, calling out my misplays, and analyzing the decisions that I could have made differently to improve my chances of winning in every single situation to make sure I was very comfortable with the deck. I wasn't overly concerned about not being able to play specific matchups by hitting random opponents on the ladder because I wasn't trying to learn the matchups. Quite the opposite. I want to make sure that given how it was technically a brand new format, I'd be able to feel comfortable enough with my deck to navigate any situation and be able to improvise on the spot in order to maximize my chances of placing well. I might not always play the exact 60 from my stream, as a card here or there could change, but my intention is for the list to be pretty much finalized by the time I'm done streaming prior to any event I'm attending. After a single grueling day of streaming, I finally had my final deck for the Merida Regional Championships. No, Miraidon is not a groundbreaking meta choice that nobody will expect. I was also putting myself at a disadvantage with this new process, since anyone can go look up my deck list off my live stream. But I'm betting on myself, and with only one day of preparation, I'm not expecting to win the whole thing, but I still want to get a good placement to give me a chance at getting my Worlds invite this year. So let's go over the inner workings of the deck and all the combo pieces. The two main cards of the deck are Miraidon EX and Electric Generator. With Miraidon's tandem unit ability, you can search your deck for 2 basic lightning Pokemon and put them onto your bench. This lets you find any lightning Pokemon you need to either pressure your opponent, such as Iron Hands, Raikou V, or Raichu V, or to help support your setup with Magnemite or Rotom V. Then you can power any of these powerful Pokemon up, including the Miraidon itself, with the Electric Generator. During my prep stream, I always talked about how I just wanted to make sure I had maximum odds of hitting 2 energy every time I played this card, and that's why I ended up playing 16 total basic lightning energy. All of the attackers in this deck have various purposes and offer different advantages. Miraidon EX has the Photon Blaster attack, which is 220, and that KOs a lot of the relevant basic Pokemon EX in the format. Next, we have Iron Hands EX, which would let me take an extra prize card on single prize Pokemon with the Amp You very much, and despite the costly energy requirement, it's almost always worth it. This Pokemon puts so much pressure that if an opponent doesn't have an answer to it immediately, they will likely lose quite quickly after that. This card is great against evolving decks like Dragapult, Gardevoir, and even Lugia because it is weak to lightning, and it can also be useful to take down common supporting Pokemon like Squawkabilly X and Luminion V, which are both weak to lightning and thus give you 3 prizes total for an Amp You very much. Then we have Raikou V. Its fleet-footed ability nets you an extra card if it's in the active spot, which can be clutch, but its main draws are that it is a V Pokemon, and therefore it can combo with the 4 Sealstone Tool card to grab any card we need, and its Lightning Rondo attack, which is 20 plus 20 more damage for each bench Pokemon in play. This combines perfectly with Area 0, which allows us to reach for some higher damage ceilings. And finally, we have the Raichu V. Its Dynamic Spark attack does 60 damage for each energy you discard off your Pokemon, allowing me to OKO any Pokemon, even those with the highest HP in the metagame, like the Dragapult EX, the Charizard EX, and the Archaladon EX. Getting rid of all that energy can strain the deck's resources a lot, but this is where the Magneton comes in. Its Overvault Discharge ability lets you grab 3 energy from your discard pile and attach them to your lightning Pokemon in any way you want. Giving up a prize card may seem bad as a trade-off, but since we don't have any other single prize Pokemon in the whole deck, it doesn't really affect us, as our opponent still needs to KO 3 of our 2 prize Pokemon to win the game anyways. Magneton is almost the main reason why this deck can compete. If you had to only rely on the Electric Generators to power up throughout the whole game, the deck would likely fall apart towards the end of a match. With a deck like this that wants to be super aggressive in the beginning, you need a very strong supporting cast of Pokemon to help you set up, and this is where Pikachu EX, Rotom V, Squawkabilly, Pheasantipity, Mew, Latias, and Luminion come into play. All of them have their purpose, and whilst rarely, if ever, any of these Pokemon will take the game-winning KO, without these helping support the deck in some way, it would not be a top-tier meta deck at all. Starting with the Pikachu EX, its only role is to be a searchable basic lightning Pokemon to combo with Area 0 under Depths, which allows you to have 3 extra bench spots if you have a Terra Pokemon in play. Its Resolute Heart ability protects it from being one-hit KO'd, and the extra bench space makes Raikou V a more formidable threat. Rotom V is actually an interesting inclusion in the deck because every time you win the coin flip, you'll want to choose second and to try and pull off a turn 1 powerful attack. But when playing a best 2 out of 3 at major tournaments, opponents will catch onto what you are playing and will choose second themselves. That is where the 3 extra cards from the Insta Charge on turn 1 really shines, as they help in setting you up for a very strong second turn after that. Squawkabilly EX is one of the best supporting Pokemon in the game, with its Squawk and Seize ability letting you discard your hand and drawing 6 new cards. Even though it's a big liability with its low HP of 160, the trade-off of getting a new hand and getting more resources to work with, especially on that first turn of the game to get going, is definitely worth it. Pheasantipity EX might be one of the best cards in the Pokemon TCG right now, providing you with extra resources every time an opponent takes a KO. These 3 extra cards from the Flip the Script ability can be game-breaking. especially in a deck like this, one that can thin and is very aggressive and would normally have a hard time recovering from hand disruption cards like the Iono or the Unfair Stamp. MewEX serves a similar purpose to the Pheasantipede EX in providing protection against hand disruption with its restart ability, letting you draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. When these two are combined, even if you go down to 1 or 2 cards in your hand, you're able to reliably find any missing pieces afterward. Its genome hacking attack is also important to note, as in some situations against stall decks, it can be useful to help deal with Mimikyus. Latias EX's Skyliner ability provides a free retreat to all basic Pokemon, which is very important since Electric Generator only provides energy to benched Pokemon. Having this flexibility, especially when you have Pokemon like Iron Hands, which has a 4 retreat cost, helps the deck be extremely versatile by having the right Pokemon attacking at the right times. And the final support Pokemon is Luminion V. Despite the fact that we only play 2 different supporter cards, the Arven and the Boss's Orders, with its Luminous Sign ability, a lot of games are decided by a well-timed boss or an early aggressive Arven use, especially to find potentially the secret box. So having a direct way to search for one or the other, depending on the situation we're in, is super important. The last Pokemon I didn't mention as a supporting one, but is still extremely important, is Iron Bundle. Its ability, Hyper Blower, forces our opponent to switch their active Pokemon with one of their benched. Even though they get to pick the Pokemon, it can be great to bypass annoying Pokemon like Mimikyu with its safeguard ability, or in some situations where your opponent only has 1 Pokemon on their bench, it can be as good as a Boss's Orders while still giving you the versatility to play Arven as the supporter for turn. That covers the Pokemon part of the list, but now let's dive into the trainers and how they help the deck perform. Our 2 supporter cards are Arven and Boss's Orders. Arven lets me search for an item card and a tool card, and there's an extremely key and powerful item the deck needs to find reliably, and that is the Electric Generator, of course. Most of the best decks in competitive Pokemon TCG rely on breaking the energy attachment rules and getting multiple energy in play on a single turn, and nothing does it more aggressively than the Electric Generator. So Arven letting you search for this game-breaking card is crucial for the deck's success. Other than Electric Generator, you can also grab a Nest Ball or Ultra Ball to find the right Pokemon at the right time, switch card in case you need to heal one of your Pokemon, or switch out in case Latias EX isn't in play. So you can Heavy Ball is also a great grab if one of the key Pokemon you need is prized, and we do play a ton of one of Pokemon in this list. A Night Stretcher to recover a Pokemon or energy from the discard pile can be crucial as well. But that's not all. They can also search for your A-Spec card, the Secret Box. Players can only play 1 A-Spec per deck as opposed to the usual 4 copies of other cards, so being able to search for it at the right time is very important. Secret Box itself discards 3 cards from your hand and lets you grab an item, supporter card, tool card, and stadium card from your deck in a single search. This combination of cards is fantastic, as it can grab the Electric Generator to power up the Boss's Orders or a follow-up Arven for the next turn, the right tool for the situation, and the Area 0 Underdepth Stadium to increase your bench size. It not only thins the deck by 4 cards, which increases the chances of Electric Generators hitting energy, but will often lead to super powerful swing turns where you can basically put together any single play that you could possibly want. Finally, let's talk about the tools and stadium cards. Forest Sealstone provides the deck with a V-Star ability, which in turn lets you search for any card you need. Electric Generator, Boss's Orders, Double Turbo Energy is one of the main ones we'll be searching out with that. You name it, Forest Sealstone gets the card. The super versatile card is amazing and really kind of pushes Arven over the top as far as a supporter goes. Rescue Board is for situations where Latias EX isn't available to provide that free retreat, and we need to get into something that we've powered up on the bench with our Electric Generators. The other tool card is Bravery Charm, which increases a basic Pokemon's HP by 50. This can protect a Pokemon by putting it out of range from getting one-hit KO'd in the active, or potentially protect our bench Pokemon from spread damage from one of our opponent's Pokemon's attacks, like Dragapult EX's Phantom Dive damage counters. And last of all, we have Area 0 Underdepth, which helps the deck go wider with 8 bench spaces if Pikachu EX is in play. We both have all the support Pokemon we need, like the Pheasantipede and MewEX, as well as help Raikou V to do extra damage with its Lightning Rondo. And the last but not the least important cards in the deck are the 16 basic Lightning Energy and 1 Double Turbo Energy. 16 Energy is a lot more than the average decks play, which tend to be between 6 to 8. However, this deck needs this many to keep the odds of finding 2 from the top 5 cards with our Electric Generators as high as possible at all times. Double Turbo Energy is the last piece of the puzzle, which makes Iron Hands EX's Amp You Very Much attack a lot more accessible, especially on that first turn of the game. through only needing a single electric generator hit of 2, and then either naturally drawing into the double turbo or more likely using Forest Sealstone to grab it. And while it does reduce the damage we deal by 20, which can affect if we can get knockouts on stuff like Lugia-V or Palkia-V, it doesn't affect it when we're trying to KO common basic Pokemon, non-2-prize Pokemon like the Ralts, Kirlia, Dreepy, Drakloak, Badoo, and others. After 9 hours on stream, I was almost done with this deck and all its pieces, but one debate remained: which Magnemite to play. Whilst Magneton is the real star in this deck, having the right Magnemite to evolve from is actually kind of a big deal. So I did the smartest thing I possibly could come up with, leaving it up to my chat to vote on which Magnemite I would use, and this is how the voting played out. Wait, no, letting chat choose. Oh, letting chat choose is cringe. All right, into a chat, I'm doing a poll. 3-minute poll. I started the poll. All right, Chip, you've been outvoted. Dude, it's 78% to 22. I have to go with chat on this one, Chip. I'm sorry. Chip sounds like chat, but it's not good enough, Chip. So we're going with chat. Chat says 78% voted for 50 HP Magnemite. It's a democracy over here, Chip. I'm sorry, it's a democracy. At this point, I was content with the 60, so I got finished with my packing, sleeved up the deck, and headed off to Merida. I made it to Merida without any issues, landing Friday night with my friend Caleb. We check into our hotel, talk a bit about the deck, double check our deck list, and call it a night. A new process, not enough prep time as I would have liked, but I'm ready to kickstart my 2025 season into full gear with the Merida Regional Championships. Starting things off, I'm up against Cesar Lopez from Mexico with his Dragapult EX Dusknoir deck. This was actually a matchup I had very little experience against, as during the stream session, I didn't hit many Dragapult, and if I did, I kind of ran over them pretty quickly and didn't get a chance to really experience the full matchup. For game 1, I won the coin flip and chose second. Caesar had a very good setup with 3 Dreepy, Duskull, Rotom to insta-charge for extra cards. One of the Dreepy had a Psychic Energy attached. I drew a mediocre hand, started with Latias. With no supporter in hand, I had to use a Nest Ball for Miraidon EX, Tandem Unit for Raikou V, Iron Hands EX, and then Ultra Ball for Squawkabilly to draw a new hand with the Squawk and Seize. From the 6 new cards, I did find a generator, but I wasn't able to find an Arven to grab for a Sealstone to search for double turbo energy and attack with the Amp You very much with Iron Hands EX, so I had to start off with Raikou V instead. He was able to respond immediately by setting up a turn 2 Dragapult EX with Sparkling Crystal and took out my Raikou V, putting damage onto my Miraidon EX, Latias, Pikachu EX, and Pheasantipity on the bench. This damage spread meant that even if I healed any of these Pokemon with my only switch card, he could still have plenty of options in range for a Phantom Dive knockout. I was not able to take a KO on this Dragapult EX, so I had to settle for an Amp You very much onto one of his Duskulls on the bench, but he still had another one. So with his second attack, Caesar went Rare Candy into Dusknoir, Curse Blast onto the Squawkabilly EX I had just put on my bench during the first turn, and then used Counter Catcher onto my Pheasantipity EX and took his last 4 remaining prize cards by knocking it out along with the Squawk. In game 2, I once again chose second, and this time I was able to piece out a turn 1 Iron Hands EX through Arven and Force Sealstone, but once again had to commit the Squawkabilly EX onto my board. He was able to respond again with a turn 2 Dragapult EX, hitting my Iron Hands and spreading some damage onto the bench in a perfect way to have multiple Pokemon in range for a Phantom Dive KO on the following turn. Then I made my first big misplay of the day. I had the option to take 2 prize cards in various ways. I could either take out his Pheasantipity EX with Miraidon EX to prevent extra draw for him. I was able to take out his Rotom V to prevent Force Sealstone, or I could take down his only Duskull in play with another Amp You very much. No matter which route I took at this point, I would take 2 prize cards, and I ended up choosing to Gust and KO his Pheasantipity EX. However, what I should have done was take out the Duskull, because it would have been just a Raichu V attack, or even a Raikou V plus boss away from winning. Instead, because I didn't deal with that Duskull, Caesar was able to go into Rare Candy Dusknoir, Gust up my Latias EX, Curse Blast onto the Squawkabilly, and take all 6 prize cards in a single turn. So I lose round 1. Never a good way to start your tournament run, but even though I lost, I have to give props to my opponent. They played this round really well, and I learned a lot. It was almost like a mini coaching session for me, and I knew that Dragapult EX was likely one of the most popular decks in the room, and therefore I had learned a very valuable lesson from this round. Round 2 goes up, and I'm paired against another Mexican player, Alexis Espinoza, with a deck I was not very familiar with, Ceruledge EX. As soon as I saw the Charcadet, I knew I had to be careful with my Magneton to avoid activating Briar and allowing them to take an extra prize card to close out a game a turn sooner. Game 1, I win the coin flip and go second because I didn't know what I was up against yet. They have Assault turn 1 with multiple Charcadet and Radiant Greninja, and also, very crucially for me, a Squawkabilly EX. On my turn, I was able to have a good board thanks to Miraidon and Arven into a Secret Box with a double hit on Electric Generator, and I immediately go with the Amp You Very Much against their Charcadet. They're able to piece just enough energy in the discard pile, thanks to Radiant Greninja, Pheasantip EX, Earthen Vessel, and Professor's Research to take down my Iron Hands EX with the Abyssal Flames in response. This was the pivotal point where I knew if I popped Magneton to power up for a Raichu KO or a boss KO on Pheasantipity, they'd be at 3 prize cards remaining, I would be at 2, and they could win with Briar. Now, I didn't know if he even played it or not, but I didn't want to risk it, so instead, I popped the Magneton to power up a second Iron Hands EX and gust up the Squawkabilly EX to put myself at 1 prize card, negating any possible Briar plays. Alexis took the next KO on Iron Hands EX with the same Ceruledge from the previous KO, but because these decks don't usually run any Iono or other forms of hand disruption, I was able to just build a huge hand by this point and use my last Electric Generator plus a boss to the Pheasantipity EX with Raikou V, thanks to Area 0. Game 2, my opponent chose second. I presume to avoid early pressure and to have a more stable turn, but Miraidon can play pretty comfortably going first, since you get to use Rotom V's Insta-Charge for extra cards, and also get an energy attachment down onto Iron Hands EX, meaning you need less for the next turn to pull off an Amp You Very Much. And that's exactly what I did. I got Miraidon EX, got my Iron Hands, a Rotom V down as well, attached, and passed using the Insta-Charge from Rotom V. My opponent had a very good setup with multiple Charcadet, the Radiant Greninja once again, but in order to get to that point, he had to play down Lumineon V to get a Professor's Research. So there was my out to avoid Briar. I didn't see the Briar hit the discard pile during game 1, but it doesn't mean they don't play it, and it's something I still need to be very careful of. On my turn, I'm able to play off a huge hand thanks to the extra cards from Rotom V's Insta-Charge ability and have a very good board setup, and I Amp You Very Much to get into the lead. They're able to once again comfortably piece out the KO on my Iron Hands EX, but this time I'm able to respond with a follow-up 2 prizes with Raikou V on their Lumineon V, leaving me 1 KO away from winning. They can't find Briar to take 3 prize cards in return and prevent me from using Magneton by having only 1 prize left. They have to settle for the KO on my Raikou, and with no disruption and some extra cards from my Flip the Script, I'm able to easily find another generator and Magneton to power up Raichu and take the 5 energy Dynamic Spark KO on the Ceruledge EX to win this round. This win puts me at 1-1, not bad, but still plenty of Pokemon left to play, and I knew I needed to remain focused to ensure I don't make any more misplays like I did in round 1. Round 3 is next, and funnily enough, I'm paired against another Ceruledge EX deck, and the matchup played out very similarly to the previous round. Game 1, I lost a coin flip, and my opponent chose first, and got off to a decent start. I unfortunately prized Magneton this game, and had a less than stellar start, but I did get a few energy in the discard, and I ended up using Magnemite's Magnetic Charge attack to get some more energy into play. This is where chat's decision paid off. I appreciate it, chat. And even though they were able to take the first prize cards, those crucial extra energy in play, and them being at 5 prize cards meant I was able to once again take a 2 prize KO on a Radiant Greninja, followed by a 3 prize KO on their unevolved Palkia V, and then finish off the game with a Raikou V KO on an unevolved Charcadet. Game 2, my opponent chooses second, but now I get a much better start and have a full board set up. 3 energy on Iron Hands EX with my attachment plus an Electric Generator, and end the turn with an Insta-Charge for even more resources. On their turn, they go through a lot of cards with Squawkabilly, Research, they find their Brilliant Blender to fully set themselves up, but I know as long as I can get the 2-3-1 or the 2-3-2 in the prize exchange, I will be just fine. I Amp You Very Much the first card Charcadet with 2 more energy on my second Iron Hands EX, and Pheasantipity EX established as well, and my V-Star is still intact, which means I haven't used my Force Seal Stone quite yet, ensuring I'll be able to pick up the KO on their Squawkabilly EX the following turn to play around the Briar once again. They took a KO on the active Iron Hands with Ceruledge EX for more than enough damage, and I go ahead with the plan using Amp You Very Much to KO their Squawkabilly EX, putting the prize count at 1-4 in my favor. They take another KO, but with no Iono in sight and no Briar utilized, I'm able to just use my Magneton again to power up for a Dynamic Spark KO on the Ceruledge EX to win the round. Now at a record of 2-1, things are looking much better, but I also know I will be facing tougher and tougher opponents as the day goes by, so no time to relax. I catch up with Caleb, find out he's also 2-1, having lost his last round, and we barely have a minute to chat before round 4 is up. Round 4, I'm paired up against a deck I did not expect to see at all, Lost Box, played by Erasmo. This is historically a weird matchup and pretty poor matchup from Miraidon EX, since it all depends on if they can answer your Iron Hands immediately or not, which they usually can, unfortunately. My opponent opens Pheasantipity EX, and for some reason I didn't process that I could get item locked by Badoo. At this point, I didn't know it was Lost Box, so if it was something like Dragapult, I would definitely be getting Badooed here. So I just went about my normal turn of using Miraidon EX's tandem unit to set up my board, attach to Iron Hands EX, and finish with an Insta-Charge. But I did have Magnemite in play, and Ultra Ball and 2 Lightning Energy in my hand that I could have used to get Magneton. On my opponent's turn, they Buddy Poffin for 2 Comfy, go about the normal Lost Box flower selecting carousel with the Colch's Experiment, and then they Buddy Poffin again and get a Badoo out. At that point, I was definitely not expecting Badoo. I didn't know that anyone was playing this in Lost Box, and they Itchy Paw in me to end their turn. This completely slowed me down because I didn't play the Ultra Ball to get the Magneton on my first turn, and so this prevented me from attacking with Iron Hands EX on turn 2, and all I could really do was attach to Iron Hands, Insta-Charge again. On his next turn, he uses Flower Selecting, gets a 7 in the Lost Zone, gets Mirage Gate to power up a Pikachu EX, and initiates the prize trade by taking the first 2 prize KO on my active Miraidon EX, which puts me in a pretty terrible spot. At this point, I know I can't deal with the Pikachu EX, and I need to guss around it to take 2 prize cards each turn, hoping he misses the KO within the next 2 turns. Unfortunately, with no hand disruption in my deck, he's able to build a huge hand and just power up Pikachu EX with Mirage Gate 2 more times after using Super Rod to recover resources, and takes the game 1 pretty handedly. For game 2, I chose second, and I have a very good hand. He gets a Buddy Poffin, gets 3 Comfy out, but can't even use all 3 since he didn't have a lot of switching effects in his hand, and instead chooses to have a Pikachu EX in the active at the end of the turn to try and prevent me from taking a KO on my turn. I started with Miraidon EX and have 2 Nest Balls, Electric Generator, and Arven in hand, as well as an Energy. So I'm able to get Iron Hands EX out of the deck and powered up with Electric Generator and Double Turbo, and use Iron Bundle's Hyper Blower ability to bring up a Comfy off the bench to the active for the first 2 prize KO. Even though I got the first 2 prize knockout, this matchup is still very winnable for Lost Box, because if he responds with Pikachu EX and knocks out my Iron Hands EX, it can be hard for me to get powered up to another Iron Hands and get around the Pikachu EX in the same turn. He's not able to get the 7 cards in the Lost Zone, however, and ends up leaving Pikachu in the active once again with Energy on it and passes. I'm able to follow up with the boss's orders to take another 2 prize cards, and I start powering up the second Iron Hands, assuming that the active one will finally get KO'd by the Pikachu this turn. He does get Pikachu EX powered up, finally takes the KO, but I'm able to bench Pheasantipity EX, flip the script, found Ultra Ball for Magneton, and I had Arven in hand to get back Iron Bundle, use Hyper Blower once again, and I win game 2 by KOing another Comfy. Game 3, he chooses first, and this time I'm a lot more aware of the possibility of my opponent using Itchy Pollen to prevent me from playing item cards next turn. However, my starting hand is pretty mediocre, with the possibility to use Tandem Unit, but no Nest Ball or Ultra Ball to find Squawkabilly, so I have to attach a Raikou V instead of Iron Hands to start applying some pressure next turn. During his turn, he doesn't get anything outstanding like a turn 1 Pikachu EX KO, so he just ends up using a bunch of Flower Selectings and ends with Badoo to item lock me in the active. Can't do too much with my hand, but I'm able to attach and get the knockout with the Raikou V. On his turn, he still isn't able to get the Pikachu EX powered up despite playing Colch's Experiment and using Flower Selecting to get to 7. Maybe he with the Mirage Gate or had the energy in the wrong places, like in the hand. So he ends up passing with Pikachu EX in the active spot. My hand still isn't great, but on my turn, I attach to my Iron Hands EX, boss up a Comfy, and take a KO to go down to 4 prizes to his 6th, whilst holding Pheasantipity EX in my hand to use next turn if he finally takes a knockout. On my opponent's next turn, he's going through a lot of cards between Colress, Super Rod, Comfy's Flower Selecting to piece out a Pikachu EX KO, which takes a very long time to the point where time got called and he was turn 0. He finally takes the KO, but with prize count at 4-4, he couldn't win the game anymore, but I could. I'm turn 1. I'm able to use Pheasantipity EX to get Arven and Electric Generator, which hit for 2 energies, allowing me to power up Iron Hands EX and use Iron Bundle, where he chooses to bring up the Radiant Greninja. I'm able to KO with Ampy very much, putting me 2-4 in prize exchange. Unfortunately, my second Iron Hands was prize, and I didn't get off those 2 prize cards either. This meant if my opponent was able to use Roxanne, which I had seen him Lost Zone in one of the previous 2 games, it would be a lot harder to get a second Iron Hands EX going, since I would need Night Stretcher and couldn't use the Tandem Unit from Miraidon to easily pull the Iron Hands out of my deck. And he's able to exactly do that on turn 2. He gets the Pikachu EX powered up again, plays a Pokegear to very crucially find the Roxanne, plays it, KOs my Iron Hands, so now it's turn 3, and despite using Tandem Unit and Flip the Script, I'm unable to find the Night Stretcher, as well as all the energy I would need, alongside a Gust Effect to get the final KO, so we end up tying. A tie puts me at 2-1-1, which is not bad, but I feel like I could have easily won that if I had not made the crucial mistake on game 1, and forgetting about Badoo. Either way, we move on, and I know I need to play even better if I want to have a better second half of the tournament. I catch up with Caleb in between rounds, we chat about our games, and then round 5 is up. Round 5, I'm paired against Alan Gomez with the Gardevoir EX, one of the best matchups for the Miraidon deck. Unfortunately, this round was the least interesting of the day. Game 1, I won the coin flip and chose second, and on his turn, he got a pretty bad start without anybody Poffins or Nest Balls, just a Monkey Dory and a Manaphy, and all he does is draw pass. On my turn, I'm able to set up very nicely the Latias EX, Miraidon, Raikou V with 4 Seal Stone available, and using Squawk and Seize, I got a powered up Iron Hands EX, no problem, after 2 successful generators without even needing to use my 4 Seal Stone yet. I take a KO on the Monkey Dory, he draws, frowns at his hands, and passes, so I just attack again to win the first game. Game 2, my opponent chooses to go second and thankfully doesn't start Klefki. I'm able to get a decent setup with energy on Iron Hands EX, Magnemite, Latias EX, Raikou and Rotom make their way into play as well, and I'm careful this time trying to play around any potential Badoo from my opponent by Ultra Balling for Magneton before ending my turn with the Insta Charge. However, on their turn, they do get 3 rolls set up with the Cresselia that they started and retreat into Klefki, but that means no Technical Machine evolution. I'm probably going to go ahead 4 prize cards before they can even attack at all. I have Electric Generator, hit 2 energy for Iron Hands EX, plus an attachment for turn ready to go, and I also have Magneton in play with second Iron Hands EX available to close out the game. I amp you very much to Klefki, take 2 prize cards. On their turn, they get only 1 Kirlia set up after an Iono and pass with Cresselia active. I found Boss's Orders and amp you very much. The only Kirlia on their turn they play Unfair Stamp, but thanks to my Latias EX and Magneton, they're out of options and can't prevent me from using amp you very much a 3rd time, and decided to concede. Not much to analyze about this one. My opponent just never got going at all and never got to evolve into a Gardevoir EX even once. Now I'm at 3-1-1 record and need 2 more wins out of the next 3 rounds to advance to day 2. Round 6, I'm paired against Yarchi with Iron Thorns EX and Dragapult EX. Normally an okay matchup if they don't start with Iron Thorns EX, and a pretty awkward one if they do. My opponent opts to go second and opens the Iron Thorns EX. My first thought was, well, I'm going to lose to quad Iron Thorns here. I can't use Tandem Unit to set up Squawk and Seize, but my hand is okay. I Nest Ball for Raikou V, attached to it, hoping to apply some quick pressure to the Iron Thorns on the next turn. Now on their turn though, they play Arven for Precious Trolley, and that's when I find out it's actually Thorns Dragapult, not quad Iron Thorns. That makes me feel a little bit better. They make a pretty big mistake here of filling up their bench with only Dreepies and the Radiant Alakazam, but no second Iron Thorns, and they also whiff an energy to use TM Evolution on the first turn. From there, I'm able to find Iron Bundle and use it to get access to my abilities because they don't have a second Thorns on their bench, so they end up pushing up the Radiant Alakazam. I'm able to power up the Raikou V, I have a solid bench for backup, and I take the KO on the Radiant Alakazam. From this point onwards, my opponent couldn't do much during their turn. Still no energy and only able to evolve 1 Dreepy into a Dracloak, and that didn't help them that much either. During my previous turn with abilities, I was able to find a Boss's Orders that I used this turn to get access to abilities again, take out their Dracloak. Once again, they can't do anything on their turn and just pass while I go ahead and play Area 0 with Pikachu, fill up my bench, take a KO on their active Iron Thorns EX, and now their field is only 3 Dreepies and nothing else, and they scoop, and we head to game number 2. Game 2, he chooses second once again and opens the Iron Thorns EX, but for some reason also decide to bench a Dreepy. This was huge since this means I'm able to use Iron Bundle to bring up the Dreepy and use Squawkabilly EX to get a fresh hand and find multiple Electric Generator to get a bunch of energy in play, powering up my Raikou V and Iron Hands EX. They have a much better start and are able to get the Buddy Buddy Poffin and Technical Machine Evolution off Arven to get going, but with Dreepy in the active instead of Iron Thorns, and so I had abilities during my next turn and I was able to attack with AMP very much to take out the first 2 prizes and remove their energy off the board. On their next turn, they can't find Crispin to power up Dragapult EX, so they just leave the Iron Thorns EX in the active, but I have a Boss's Orders to take out the Dracloak once again and put myself 4 prize cards in the lead. Now my opponent finally gets a Dragapult EX going, but can't take a KO on my active undamaged Iron Hands, but they do Iona me down to 2 cards. Unfortunately for them, my top deck was another Boss's Orders, so I'm able to just take out a Dreepy to get my final 2 prize cards. So this round definitely should have been a more difficult matchup, but he made some pretty big mistakes as he wasn't aggressively trying to keep Iron Thorns EX in the active to shut me down or as an active threat, and I was able to punish the mistakes made in that one. Now at 4-1-1, I just need to win one more round to make it through to day 2, and I'm feeling a lot more confident in my play as I walk to my table for round 7. For round 7, I go up against Alberto Gomez with the Golden Go EX, and this matchup played out similarly to the Gardevoir EX in the previous round. Game 1, my opponent decides to go second and flips over Radiant Greninja. This doesn't tell me much information on what I'm up against, but I can take 2 prize cards off it with the Amp You Very Much. So I have a straightforward turn 1 where I Nest Ball for Miraidon and Tandem Unit for the Rotom V and the Iron Hands EX with Magnemite in my active, attach to my Iron Hands EX, and then use the Instant Charge to get myself some extra cards. My opponent has an underwhelming turn where they just Nest Ball for Gimmighoul after discarding an energy for concealed cards, bench Bidoof, and pass. I'm able to find Electric Generator plus Boss to KO the only Gimmighoul in play. They promote Bidoof and finally find a Buddy Poffin for 2 more Gimmighouls and Night Stretcher 1 back, but they can't do much else and pass from there. Now I know I will take another 2 prize cards with the active, so all I need to do is make sure I thin as much as possible and set everything up to either find a boss to KO 1 more Pokemon with Iron Hands EX, or have enough energy to KO this upcoming Golden Go EX with Raichu V. And even though these decks do sometimes play hand disruption like a One of Iono or Roxanne, I set up a super powerful board state, get the Fezandipiti EX, the Mew EX, Magneton, and Raichu in play so I can respond to anything they do. I KO the Bidoof, they promote a Gimmighoul, evolve to Golden Go EX, play the Energy Surge Pro, and take a knockout on my Iron Hands EX, and I just promote Mew, Tandem Unit to find Raichu V, use Magneton's ability to get it fully powered up, and thanks to another energy in play, I use the Dynamic Spark, discarding 5 energy to take a KO, and I win game number 1. Game 2, he decides to go first, sets up 3 Gimmighouls with Buddy Poffin, and passes. I'm able to piece together a turn 1 Iron Hands EX KO with an Arven for Generator and 4 Steel Stone for the double Turbo Energy, take the first KO on the Gimmighoul. On their turn, they are able to evolve into Golden Go EX, but somehow miss the KO on my Iron Hands EX, as I can't find Irida or Arven for the Energy Surge Pro. So on my turn, I just Iron Bundle to bring up the Radiant Greninja off their bench, whilst getting more energy on the board with Electric Generator and attaching for turn, as well as setting up the Magneton and take 2 more prize cards, meaning I only need 2 more prizes to win the game. On their next turn, they finally find an Arven to get themselves the Energy Surge Pro, take a KO, and leaving their field with only 2 Golden Go EX, which can be troublesome to KO sometimes, but it's a little bit too slow. I just promote Miraidon, Tandem Unit for Raichu, use Magneton to power up the Raichu, and then the Dynamic Spark for 5 energies once again to KO a Golden Go to get the dub. Another pretty straightforward round puts me at a record of 5-1-1, so I have now secured my spot into day 2, and with 1 round to go, I still need 4 more wins to make top cut. In round 8, I'm paired up against Emiliano with Palkia, V-Star, and Dusknoir. An extremely good matchup for Miraidon. Game 1, I win the coin flip, and I choose to go second. And my opponent flips over a Palkia V. They get aboard a Duskull's, Badoo, and Radiant Greninja, and a second Palkia V, but down to a 2-card hand. On my turn, I get a very good start, and I'm able to play a Secret Box from hand to fully set up my board with Area 0. Pikachu EX, Latias EX, Squawkabilly EX, and the usual Raikou V, Miraidon EX, and Iron Hands EX, alongside 2 energy from an Electric Generator onto the Iron Hands. And then off the Squawk, I don't get much going, so I have to use the 4 Steel Stone to get another Electric Generator, but only need 1 energy to get a clean 3 prizes. I do get 2. I attach from hand to Raikou V and take 3 prize cards with the Amp You Very Much on the active Palkia V. Well, turns out my opponent's 2 cards in hand were Rare Candy and Dusknoir, and he top decked another Duskull. So all he could do was leave the Dusknoir in the active and pass to try and stop me from getting 2 more prize cards with Iron Hands. But I had boss's orders to KO the other Palkia V on the bench, take my remaining 3 prize cards, and I get the dub in game 1. For game 2, he decided to go second this time, so I did my usual setup of Tandem Unit for Iron Hands EX and Rotom V, attached to Iron Hands EX, and then Instant Charge to end my turn. He did have Iono to take away my hand, but after Iono, their board is looking a little weak with only 1 Palkia V down. They do have a couple Duskull, Radiant Greninja, and Badoo. But with the energy to retreat into the Badoo, on my turn, I'm able to hit an Electric Generator, energy, and boss's orders onto the Palkia V to take it down to 3 prize cards like in game 1, and I established Fezandipiti EX and Magneton in play to respond to any possible Iono counterplay. On his turn, he benches Blood Moon Ursaluna, uses Dusclops Cursed Blast onto my Squawkabilly, which gives me another prize card, bringing me down to 2 now, and promotes the Blood Moon Ursaluna and plays Iono. He does find the energy this time and KOs my Iron Hands EX, but I drew pretty well off the 2 cards from the Iono. Arven, and Nestball. I Nestball for the Mew EX, Tandem Unit for the Raichu, Play Arm for an Electric Generator, and Bravery Charm. I hit the 2 energy alongside the 3 from Magneton to win the game quite quickly with the Raichu's Dynamic Spark once again. My final record for day 1 is 6 wins, 1 loss, 1 tie. A very good position to be heading into day 2, but still 4 more rounds to go before top cut. I need to win 3 and tie 1, so no margin for error really, but if I can keep capitalizing on my opponent's mistakes tomorrow, I think I can make it. To start day 2, I go up against Pablo Meza, who's a content creator himself, as well as pro player and official Pokemon caster. For the first time in the tournament, I knew what my opponent was playing since I had seen Melodic in play in one of his games when walking around the previous day. Now, I didn't know the exact list, but I know that All Out Blitzel had been Control's most popular pilot recently and had been having success with it online, so I looked up his list and I figured I could assume Pablo was playing something fairly similar, if not the exact 60. The big takeaway from that list was that he didn't have any accompanying Flute or Erica's Invitation to force a Pokemon onto my bench, as well as no Mawile, and so Pablo's only way of trapping a Pokemon was through Wellspring Ogerpon's Sob attack. This meant I could safely use Rotom V as a draw engine throughout the game, because even if it gets trapped, it can attack and apply pressure to the Ogerpon with its Scrap Short attack, since Ogerpon is weak to Lightning. For game 1, he won the coin flip and chose to go second. I started Miraidon EX and he started Chien-Pao, not Chien-Pao EX. So I went about my normal setup, avoiding Squawkabilly EX and just going through Tandem Unit for Rotom V and Raikou V, benching Magnemite and attaching to Miraidon EX, and ending my turn using Instacharge. On Pablo's turn, he wasn't able to get a Pidgey down, but did get a Bravery Charm on his Rotom V and uses Instacharge himself. On my following turn, I had to plan to power up Iron Hands EX and chase any of Pablo's Pidgeys, but since he didn't get one in play, I opted to use Iron Bundle and KO his Rotom V with Raichu's Dynamic Spark attack. I didn't need to use Magneton to do this since I got an Electric Generator, and this meant I could still power up anything I wanted next turn with no issues whatsoever. But being aggressive and taking down the draw engine early is very good against any type of control deck. On his turn, he is finally able to get a Pidgey out, still has the Chien-Pao in the active spot, which is a second Rotom, but without Bravery Charm, and ends his turn with the Insta-Charge. He didn't play Iono, so now I have a lot of resources I built up in my hand. I'm able to power up an Iron Hands EX with Magneton. I can bench Latias EX safely now since I still have my Switch card available, and I'm about to go down to 2 prize cards, so I just need 2 more to win, and I can KO Rotom V with Miraidon EX, Raichu V, or Raikou V, or Chien-Pao with Iron Hands EX. So I go ahead, use the Boss's Orders to KO the Pidgey. At this point, Pablo's only chance of winning here is an Iono plus Blood Moon play of sorts to try and wipe out my board. But I have Fez EX on my bench, as well as an unused Forest Sealstone in case that happens. On his turn, though, he just looks at his hand after drawing and decides to scoop and go to game 2. In game 2, he chooses second once again. I get a solid start with Raikou V in the active against his Radiant Alakazam. I Nestball for Miraidon EX, get Rotom V and Raichu V attached to the active, and go for an Insta-Charge to build up my hand. On Pablo's turn, he once again fails to bench a Pidgey on turn 1, but once again sets up a Rotom on the bench with the Bravery Charm and Insta-Charges to end the turn. I end up doing the exact same play, bringing up his Rotom V with Iron Bundle and KOing it with Raichu V after a successful Generator hit, putting me in a very good position once again. He ends up responding very aggressively by benching the Wellspring Ogerpon EX, attaching Counter Gain to it, using Switch to bring into the active, and then using Counter Catcher on my Rotom V. At this point, I'm not too worried about this trap, since I can just double attach to Rotom V and do 80 damage to the Ogerpon EX, threatening a 2-hit KO with any of my tools still available, and I still have my Switch card available as well if I need to pivot into a different attacker. Since the Ogerpon has Counter Gain instead of the Defiance Vest on it, which Pablo discarded on the first turn, my game plan from here seems pretty straightforward. He benches a Pidgey as well and announces Sob and does 20 damage. On my turn, I know I can take it slow, and I just attach the Rotom V and Insta-Charge to build up my hand even further. On his turn, Pablo is able to play Grand Tree, finally gets Pidgeot EX out, and quick searches for what I think was a double Turbo Energy, and then uses Sob now for 0 damage. On my turn, I attach another energy to Rotom V, and place 80 on his Ogerpon EX. He seems confused by this and asks me which tool card I am lost zoning for the damage. I tell him none, as Rotom's Scrap Short does a base 40 damage, and he seemed genuinely surprised by this. He later told me he actually thought the attack did 40 times, not 40 plus, which made sense based on how he played out that situation. So it seems like he scrambles during his turn because of this, but only does a quick search for something and then goes for another damageless Sob. On my turn, I discard Bravery Charm with Ultra Ball, evolve into Magneton, and hit an Electric Generator for 2 energy on Miraidon EX. So now I can KO the active Ogerpon with Rotom V by sending my Bravery Charm to the Lost Zone. So now I deal 160 damage, and I have Magneton to power up, Raichu V to KO a potential Blood Moon or Salune EX, or just use Miraidon or Raikou V with a Gust effect like the boss's orders to KO the Lightning Weak Pidgeot EX. I take the KO with Rotom V, which is the first and only time I've ever taken a knockout with Rotom V. I go down to 2 prize cards remaining with the board I have. I think Pablo sees the writing on the wall and just concedes before even drawing a card on his turn, as he knows there's very little he can do about the situation. I think if Pablo hadn't made that mistake and instead went with an aggressive Blood Moon or Salune EX play early on, he might have had a better chance, but I was very glad to get that win in what could have potentially been a very awkward matchup. If I started any of my trappable Pokemon like the Squawkabilly, Luminion, or even Pikachu EX, they could pretty easily get stuck in the active. This win means I'm at a 7-1-1 record. I need 2 more wins to secure my place in Top Cut, and so far day 2 started off in the best way possible. Pairings for round 10 go up, and I see I'm paired against my first non-Mexican opponent, Jack Moore from Canada, playing the Gardevoir EX. I win the coin flip and choose to go second in game 1. Jack starts with Monkey Dory and gets double Buddy Poffin to grab 3 Ralts and a Spiritomb, which very crucially stops my Luminion V and Rotom V's abilities. He attaches a Psychic to a benched Ralts and passes. I started with Miraidon EX, which is pretty solid, and I know I need to get Iron Hands going this turn if I'm going to have a chance at winning. So I Tandem Unit for 1 and a Raikou V, then Nest Ball for Mew EX and Ultra Ball for Squawkabilly EX. Attached to Iron Hands EX, play down for Seal Stone onto the Raikou V, and this puts me at a 0-card hand. I use Mew EX's Restart to draw 3 cards, and I draw the 1 card I probably didn't want to see at this point, the Switch card. Usually I need this card to get out of a potential Mawile lock, which I did know Jack was running because Caleb had played against him earlier in the tournament. But if I hold this hand to save the Switch card to avoid getting trapped later on down the line, and I don't use Squawkabilly EX's ability, I probably won't be able to apply enough pressure quickly enough to actually win this game. So I decide to use the Squawk and Seize anyways, and just try to apply pressure and hope that the Mawile combo can't be found before I'm able to take at least 4 prize cards, so I can use the Prime Catcher to get my remaining 2 prize cards. Play the Switch card to get into my Mew EX to use it as a pivot because it does have the free retreat, and draw a pretty good hand including Electric Generator Arvin, so I'm able to power up Iron Hands EX and take the first 2 prize cards with the Amp You very much. On his turn, he promotes Ralts with Energy, plays Arvin, grabs a Nest Ball and Technical Machine Evolution. He Nest Balls for Mawile and uses the TM Evolution to evolve into Double Curlia on the bench. Now I know that if he's able to trap my Squawkabilly EX, it's game over. And if he went for the Mawile, then there's a very high chance that he just has the way to get it back immediately if I KO it. I think I still have to go for it though, as it forces him to have extra cards to pull off the full lock, as he still needs a Night Stretcher and a Counter Catcher or Boss's Orders as opposed to just one of those gusting effects. I play out my turn, getting my second Iron Hands EX ready to go in case he KOs me somehow, and Boss KO the Mawile, putting me at 2 prize cards to his 6. On his turn, he uses Double Refinement with the newly evolved Curlias and does the play that locks him the game, retreats the active Ralts with Energy, evolves into a Guard EX, gets Energy on Mawile, uses Counter Catcher on my Squawkabilly, and uses Tempting Trap. My Switch card gone and him having more cards left in his deck than I do, the best I can do is hit for 20 with Motivate on my Squawkabilly and hope he pries all his Dark Energy so he won't be able to heal with Monkey Dory. He draws, immediately benches Monkey Dory, attaches a Dark Energy, so now he can just Adrenaline Brain any damage I deal with my Squawkabilly. So I scoop to hopefully have enough time to win games 2 and 3, as long as this doesn't happen or he is not able to trap me twice in one game. For game 2, I choose to go second once again, and Jack gets a less impressive start with a Manaphy in the active and 2 Ralts on the bench after a Buddy Poffin. I have a less than stellar start with Magnemite in the active and Miraidon EX off the top, but no Arvin, Nest Ball, or Ultra Ball to get any acceleration any access to more cards at all. So I whiff the turn 1 KO and just have to use Insta Charge for more resources. Now Jack is able to Arven for another Buddy Poffin, for Spiritomb and Ralts, and TM Evo to evolve 2 of his Ralts into Kirlias. On my turn, I was able to get an Arven and an Electric Generator off the Rotom, so I end up powering up Iron Hands EX and taking a KO on the Manaphy for the first 2 prize cards. However, this is where I made another crucial mistake in benching the second Iron Hands EX. Because of my slow start, I wasn't able to go wide on my board and don't have bench space for Latias EX. So even though I did play 2 generators this turn, I whiffed one of them completely. 0 energy. So it was just a no energy Iron Hands EX with nothing else. On Jack's turn, he's able to get a counter catcher, Monkey Dory with the Dark Energy, and a Gardevoir EX using multiple refinements to attack my Iron Hands EX with no energy for 190 plus the Adrenabrain to put it up to 220. And now on my turn, I have to use my Switch card to retreat this Iron Hands EX to prevent Jack from taking a KO on it with a Adrenabrain and also putting himself 1 KO away from winning the game. However, I also need a boss's orders to target something on the bench, so I have no space for Raichu V either. But then on the following turn, Jack is able to get the Maul while attempting Trap Play once again onto my Rotom V, and even though I powered it up and attacked with it, he already had 1 Monkey Dory, meaning I was basically dealing 10 damage per turn, and then he eventually sets up his second Monkey Dory, so I was locked out for the rest of the game from dealing any damage or having any possibility of drawing any prize cards. Game 1 basically came down to the unfortunate draw of the Switch card off my restart on the Mew, but Game 2, I could have definitely avoided benching the second Iron Hands EX. It would have given me a way better chance at taking that game and pushing it to a Game 3. At this point, I'm at 7-1, and I'm thinking that with 2 losses, I am out of contention unless something really crazy happens, and I was kind of okay with that, since if I win out, I can still get top 16, and I was kind of content with that placement. Round 11 updates on my phone, and I'm up against another player from Mexico, Jonathan Martinez, playing Gardevoir EX as well. I win the coin flip and choose to go second. On turn 1, he starts with Ralts, but it's the Scarlet and Violet Ralts, so I already know this list is going to be out of the norm. All he can do is Nest Ball for another Ralts and pass. I started with Mew EX, not knowing what I was up against, and I'm not happy seeing its Gardevoir EX after just losing to it in the previous round. However, my start is great with Arven and Nest Ball in hand, so I'm able to get the Secret Box for Nest Ball, 4 Seal Stone, and Area 0, and get a full setup going with Squawkabilly EX, Pikachu EX, Latias EX, Miraidon EX to get Iron Hands, and the Raikou V out. Squawkin Seas into a new hand and hit an Electric Generator. I get 2 energies off it, and then 4 Seal Stone for the double turbo energy to amp you very much and leave him with a single Ralts in play. On his turn, he plays Arven, gets a Buddy Poffin, plus a TM Evo, uses that to evolve into 2 Kirlias, but I'm able to set up Magneton to have that ready to go in case he KOs my active Iron Hands EX with a Drifloon. I can set up another Iron Hands EX, or even power up Raichu V and KO a potential Gardevoir EX next turn as well. I amp you very much for 2 more prize cards, putting me at 2 to his 6. On his turn, he promotes Kirlia, uses Refinement, gets Bravery Charm, Drifloon, Gardevoir EX, and 4 energy onto the Drifloon to take the KO on my Iron Hands. I quickly respond with Magneton into the second Iron Hands EX to win the game. In Game 2, he chose to go second. I start Mew EX versus his Badoo, and at this point, based on his weird Ralts choice and the way he played last game, I'm predicting he doesn't have the Mawile. I go for my usual setup, get Rotom V down to end my turn with Insta Charge. This time around, my opponent does have a much better start with double Buddy Poffin and an Arven to get the Earthen Vessel for energy, discarding a Psychic with it and getting 2 more Psychics, and using the TM Evo to evolve to 2 Kirlias instead of going with the Itchy Pollen to item lock, which I think I would have been fine against even if he had opted for the Badoo attack. On my turn, I'm able to get the Iron Hands EX powered up and have Magneton already established, Latias EX, and Pheasantip EX in play to protect from Iono, and the other Iron Hands EX ready to go with 2 energy from an Electric Generator, and I take the KO. My opponent starts our turn by getting a 3rd Kirlia into play, plays Iono, uses Refinement to cycle through the deck, and finds all the pieces to take a knockout with Drifloon onto my Iron Hands EX. I drew into an Arven off the Iono, so I was able to use that to find my Night Stretcher, get back the recently KO'd Iron Hands EX, and use Magneton to get 2 more energy on the active, 1 more onto the bench, and my attachment for turn as well onto the bench. Take another Amp You Very Much KO to go down to 2 prize cards with an Iron Hands set up on my bench with 2 energy on it. I thought that was in a great spot. Even if my opponent got back the Drifloon and got another KO, all I needed to find was 1 Electric Generator and hit 1 energy on it, plus an attachment for turn to win the game. My opponent cycles through the deck with Refinement and Concealed cards, but based on his facial expressions, he didn't get Night Stretcher plus Bravery Charm to get back Drifloon. and be able to Iono me in the same turn. So he has to settle for an Arven at that point. And I know I'm in a good position since I have an Arven in my hand as well. He gets back the Drifloon, powers it up, and KOs my Iron Hands EX, tying us at 2 prize cards each. I draw and use Pheasantipity X to see if I can find one of the 2 remaining electric generators before I Arven for the other, but miss. I Arven for it, and it all comes down to this. I have a lightning energy in my hand, so I just need to hit 1 energy to win the game. I use it, and I actually only get 1. It's the very last card, but that's enough. I attach that in my energy for turn to Iron Hands EX and use the Amp You Very Much for a 6th time in a row this series, and I get the dub. Being able to predict my opponent didn't have Mawile for game 2 based on some of his card choices was key, and let me really play way more aggressively than I normally would against Rivalry X. So this round felt very different and went a lot smoother than the previous one against Jack. And I was glad to walk away with the win, putting me at a 8-1 record and closer to that top 16. The last round of the day gets posted, and I'm up against Alejandro with Ancient Box, possibly one of the worst matchups I could have faced. That's unfortunate. Game 1, I win the coin flip and choose to go second, and I see a Fluttermane in the active and a Roaring Moon on the bench, and my first thought was that my tournament run was very likely over. He ended up attaching an Ancient Booster capsule to his benched Roaring Moon instead of the active, and just passes. On my turn, I'm able to get the turn 1 Iron Hands EX through using Squawkabilly X after getting it out with Miraidon EX and Tandem Unit, and hit an Arven and 2 energy from an electric generator to take the initiative. Now this is where I realize he has a pretty dead hand, as all he does is promote Roaring Moon, no energy or supporter played. It just benches a Great Tusk and passes. On my turn, I can't take a KO on the active Roaring Moon, as I don't have a way to power up Miraidon EX with electric generator or Magneton, so I decide to use Iron Bundle to force the Great Tusk into the active and hit it with Amp You Very Much. Most Ancient decks don't play a lot of switching outs, if any, and even if he does play something like Petron EX, I'd be happy to see that hit the field, as it is a 2 prize liability. On his turn, he finally top decks a Pokestop, which gives him an Earthen Vessel, which he then uses to get 2 Darkness energy, benches Radiant Greninja, uses the concealed cards, and attaches to the Roaring Moon on the bench to set himself up to attack in the next turn. However, now with the Radiant Greninja down, all I need to do is get another Iron Hands EX setup going with a Gust effect to win after I take 2 more prize cards on the Great Tusk going into my turn. I start preparing for that with a Miraidon EX just in case I need to just KO the active twice, and then I take another knockout with the Amp You Very Much, putting me down to 2 prize cards to his 6. On his turn, he does finally set up a Roaring Moon, but he doesn't even have enough Ancient cards to take a KO on anything on my board, so he just retreats into Petron EX and passes. At that point, I just need to attach once more to my Miraidon EX, and I take a KO to win game 1. In game number 2, things went very similarly. He chose to go first and started a Roaring Moon against my Mew EX, benched a second one, and passed. On my turn, I was able to get a Miraidon EX powered up with an electric generator off of an Arven, and had a decent setup behind it with a Raikou V with 4 Seal Stone attached, Magnemite, and a Mew EX. I take a KO with the Photon Blaster. Alejandro's turn, plays an Explorer's Guidance and finds a Radiant Greninja, an Earthen Vessel off of that, draws 2 cards, and attaches the active Roaring Moon, hoping I don't have a way to attack next turn. My hand has Arven and Nest Ball, so I'm able to find Iron Bundle and start preparing an Iron Hands EX alongside my Switch Cart to retreat into the Mew EX to reset Miraidon EX's Photon Blaster attack and KO his only Roaring Moon in play, with my 4 Seal Stone still available to set up anything I want on my next turn. All he has is the Radiant Greninja, uses concealed cards, stares at his hand for a few moments, and then extends his hand to concede game number 2. Very fortunate for me that he drew so poorly, as usually this can be a tough matchup since Iron Hands EX doesn't have too many great targets to KO if they manage their board well, and then they can eventually take 1-hit KOs on all of my 2 prize Pokemon. After I win this round, I have a record of 9 wins, 2 losses, and a tie, and I know I'm locked for top 16, which I'm happy about and fairly content with. However, due to how some of the players approach the final round, I actually was able to make the asymmetrical top cut because of a couple ties and IDs. Standings get posted, and with how things played out, there's a 14-person asymmetrical top cut, so everyone other than the top 2 seeded players had to play an extra round. I see him up against Steven Salas from Costa Rica playing Dragapult EX. Coincidentally enough, he was the Ancient Box player that knocked me out of Day 2 contention at Worlds in Hawaii. So we're going to have a nice little rematch here. in Merida. Game number 1, I win the coin flip and of course choose to go second. He started Dreepy versus my Raikou V. On his turn, he has a Buddy Poffin to bench another Dreepy and a Badoo, whilst attaching Fire Energy to the bench Dreepy and passes. On my turn, I have a very solid hand, and thanks to Nest Ball and Ultra Ball, I'm able to find Squawkabilly and Miraidon EX, tandem unit for the Magnemite and the Iron Hands, use Squawk and Seize to find Arven and a bunch of other useful cards. Off the Arven, I'm able to grab Secret Box and for a Seal Stone, whilst Secret Box grabs me Electric Generator and a follow-up Arven for the next turn, as well as a Bravery Charm. Now here I hit both energy from the Electric Generator onto the Iron Hands, so I use for a Seal Stone to grab the double turbo energy, and before I retreat to attack, I attach a Bravery Charm to my Magnemite so that in case Steven gets a Dragon Ball DX set up with the Sparkling Crystal attacking next turn, he can't KO my Magnemite, and I can threaten a return KO with the Raichu V. I take the first 2 prize cards on the Dreepy with the Ampy very much, and on Steven's turn, he is able to play Arven to find Rare Candy and Sparkling Crystal, evolve into the Dragapult EX, and attack into the Iron Hands, as well as placing some damage counters on my board to put everything in range of Phantom Dives. However, he doesn't have another Dreepy in play at all, just the Badoo and a Pheasantipity EX. So if I can pull together the KO with Raichu V, I put myself in a very commanding position in the game. I currently only have 2 Lighting Energy in play on my Iron Hands EX, and with Magneton I can get 3 more, so all I need is my attachment for turn, bench Latias EX for the free retreat. I also play an Electric Generator that turn, giving me 2 extra energy cards to attach to my Miraidon EX to have that ready to potentially win the game next turn with a boss KO on the benched Pheasantipity EX. I then take the knockout on the Dragapult EX with the Dynamic Spark, go up to a prize count lead of 2-6 in my favor. Steven is able to Iona me and finds another Dreepy and a Duskull and uses the Itchy Pollen to try and slow me down with the Badoo. I do find a Lightning Energy and a Boss's Orders from the 2 cards I drew from Iono, so I go ahead, attach to Miraidon, and boss KO the Pheasantipity EX to take the first game. We set up for game 2 where he chooses to go second this time. I start Squawkabilly EX versus his Dreepy, and I have 2 Nest Balls to get my usual setup of Miraidon EX, Iron Hands, Magnemite alongside the Rotom V. Benching the Magnemite is very crucial on turn 1 against Dragapult EX because that way I can evolve it next turn and protect it from going down to a Phantom Dive without needing to get the Bravery Charm onto the Magnemite like I did in game number 1. I go ahead and Squawk and Seize and find an Electric Generator, which hits 2 energy, so now I have 3 energy on my Iron Hands. EX to threaten Ampy very much, even if he uses the Itchy Pollen next turn. Plays an Arven to grab Rescue Board and Buddy Poffin for a Dreepy and a Duskull. Uses Artisan to grab Badoo, retreats, attaches to the Dreepy with no Rescue Board, and then uses Itchy Pollen. I get lucky and top deck Boss to start my turn, so I attach Rescue Board to Squawkabilly, attach Energy to Iron Hands, and use Boss to KO with Ampy very much on his Dreepy with the energy. Since his last Dreepy has the Rescue Board, he can't respond with a Dragapult EX with Sparkling Crystal to attack. However, finds Pheasantipity EX, uses Flip the Script, and is able to find Rare Candy, Dragapult EX, and Crispin to still pull off a Phantom Dive that turn despite not having access to the Sparkling Crystal. Sets up the rest of the board to be in range. However, just like game 1, he doesn't have a backup Dreepy on the bench. So I'm able to do the exact same thing as the previous game. Get Latias EX down, get Raichu V powered up to use the Dynamic Spark, and I take a KO on his only threat in play. On his next turn, he plays Iono, goes back into Badoo with the item lock, so I can't win immediately maybe on my next turn. But it turns out Steven prized 2 Dreepy and his only Night Stretcher, so he has no more outs to set up a Dragapult EX into play. He could try to use Dusclops or Dusknoir to get a prize card, or even snipe something with Pheasantipity EX as he attached an energy to it that turn. But at that point, I knew the game was basically over. All I had to do was prepare an attacker to take down Pheasantipity EX, and the game would be done. I attach energy to Squawkabilly EX and use the Motivate to attach 2 energies to my Miraidon EX, and it takes me a couple more turns to win, but eventually I do Gust KO the Pheasantipity EX before he was able to use it to attack me or set up a Dusknoir to get some prize cards to find a Dreepy. Now I'm headed into top 8, and I'm going up against Caleb Rogerson with Miraidon EX. At this point, I knew what he was playing, but he definitely had more experience in the mirror match than I did. And he was also playing the Zapdos from Pokemon Go, which, while nice to allow Miraidon EX to potentially KO an Iron Hands EX with the extra 10 damage boost, more importantly, it's to create a situation on turn 1 where you leave Pikachu EX in the active, Zapdos on the bench, so you can make it really hard for your opponent to take a 2 prize turn without Boss's Orders. Pikachu EX can't be KO'd thanks to the Resolute Heart ability, and Zapdos can be, but requires 4 basic Lightning Energy on the Iron Hands EX You can't use the double turbo energy because the damage reduction means you no longer would get the KO. In comparison, I can't do that without the Zapdos myself. I can try to have Pikachu EX in the active and Iron Bundle on the bench, but Iron Bundle can be KO'd by a double turboed Iron Hands, which makes it way easier to get the initial 2-prize knockout. I won the coin flip in game 1 and chose second. Likely a mistake on my part, but I didn't know any better at this point. He starts with Zapdos versus my Magnemite. He gets the ideal start, getting the Zapdos in the active, and on his bench, the Pikachu EX, Magnemite, Miraidon EX, Iron Hands EX, and a Rotom V with a double turbo energy on the Iron Hands EX, and uses Insta Charge. On my turn, I get a pretty slow start. My hand isn't great, but I am able to use Ultra Ball, discarding 2 energy to get my Miraidon EX and Tandem Unit for Raikou V and Pikachu EX to the bench. I then use Magnemite's Magnetic Charge attack to power up my Miraidon EX. Caleb gets a solid turn and is able to get Electric Generator to power up Iron Hands, switch card to bring to the active, and then goes Ampy very much on my Magnemite for the first 2-prize knockout. Then on my turn, I decide I'm going to ignore the Iron Hands EX because it's not a threat to any of my Pokemon anymore, since its damage output is not great against EXs. So long as I don't overextend my bench, it should be useless other than providing more energy to discard for Raichu V. I'm able to get Bravery Charm and Boss's Orders to KO his Miraidon EX, tying us at 4-4 prize cards each. This means he now has to use and commit Nest Balls and Ultra Balls to find his follow-up attacker, or another Miraidon EX to then find that attacker, and that means he can't use those resources to find stuff like Mew EX or Pheasantipity EX for draw power. He uses Nest Ball to find Raichu V, and then has to use Magneton for 2 energy and an Electric Generator to have 6 energy in play, but doesn't get an attachment for turn. He does get the OKO on my Miraidon EX, but has to discard all 6 Lightning Energy in play with the Dynamic Spark because of the Bravery Charm, and goes down to 2 prize cards to my 3 because he used the Magneton earlier on. In response on my turn, I do the same thing. I power up Miraidon EX with Electric Generator and an energy for turn. Boss KO his Miraidon EX again off the bench that he had gotten last turn, leaving him with only Iron Hands EX and Raichu V as realistic attackers, but no good target for Iron Hands. And with no Magnemite, he's to hit 3 out of 4 energy from 2 Electric Generators to piece together the last KO on my Miraidon EX. At this point, I suspected that he had prized his Raikou V, because it would have been a pretty good attacker at multiple points during the game up to this point. On his turn, he isn't able to do anything significant other than attach energy to Raichu, have the Pikachu X in the active spot, and uses Insta Charge to end his turn. On my turn, the first thing I do is Nest Ball for Iron Bundle and use its ability, and this is where Caleb makes a crucial mistake. He instantly promotes Zapdos, forgetting he had used Magneton already and had 1 prize card left instead of 2. I then benched Lumineon to get Arvid to then get my switch card, so I reset my Miraidon EX's attack and took my last prize card to win the game. Going into game 2, Caleb chooses to go first and is able to once again have the ideal setup, with Pikachu EX in the active this time instead of Zapdos. My hand is extremely good this game, and on my turn I immediately use Iron Bundle. He promotes Zapdos, and from there I'm able to use my Miraidon EX to get Iron Hands EX and Raikou V, use 2 Electric Generators, which both hit 2 energy, so I have 4 energy on my Iron Hands EX, and I get to attach energy as well to my Miraidon EX, and I retreat my Mew EX, KO on the Zapdos with the Amp You Very Much for the first 2 prize cards. On his turn, he's able to get back the Zapdos with Night Stretcher, power up a Miraidon EX with Electric Generator and a Bravery Charm on it to return KO my Iron Hands EX to tie up the prizes at 4-4 and make it as difficult as possible for me to take another 2 prize cards. However, I was running hotter than the sun this game, and on my turn I'm able to find my 2 other Electric Generators after using to flip the script, and both hit for 2 energies each, so I'm able to have 2 Miraidon EX powered up, and I have Boss's Orders ready to go to KO his Miraidon EX on the bench, going down to 2 prize cards. With no hand disruption for either of us, all he can do is take a KO on one of my Miraidon EX, but I just have Lumineon for another Boss's Orders with my final Miraidon EX to KO his Rotom to win the game and advance to top 4. I learned a lot about the matchup during those games, and I do feel Caleb had an advantage heading into the round, not only with his list, but by knowing to choose first. But I got the better side of the draw in each game, and he did make a slight mistake. Heading to top 4, I'm up against Rolando Coronado with a Cloth Terrapagos EX. This matchup is slightly unfavored for me, I would say, but it really all depends on who gets the first 2 prizes most of the time, and therefore the coin flip to decide who goes first matters a lot. I win the coin flip and go second. He opens a Rangaroo, but turns out he prized Precious Trolley between Force Seal Stone, Carmine, Nest Balls, Ultra Balls. He is able to get Latias EX, Brute Bonnet with Capsules, Cloth, Terrapagos EX, and retreats into Brute Bonnet. On my turn, I have a very good start, and the first thing I do is use Iron Bundle. He chooses to promote Cloth. I am then able to use Miraidon EX's Tandem Unit to go for Iron Hands and Raikou V. bench Magnemite, and then I get 4 energy onto the Iron Hands with 2 Electric Generator, double hits, attach energy for turn to Raikou V, and take the first 2 prizes with Amp You Very Much against the Cloth. On his turn, he's not able to get anything going really, and whiffs the KO on my Iron Hands EX. After that, on my turn, I'm able to get more Pokemon out, attach energy to Raikou V, take a KO on his Oranguru V, putting me at 4 prize cards ahead, and he decides to concede after promoting Terapagos EX and seeing his top deck. Game 2, he decides to go second. I have a rough hand. Ideally, I want to set up for a potential Iron Hands EX on his Badoo on turn 2, but my hand was underwhelming. Just started Magnemite, Tandem Unit for Rotom V and Iron Hands EX attached to it, and then I use Insta Charge for 3 extra cards. On his turn, he has a much better start, has all the pieces necessary to KO my Magnemite with Badoo and the Binding Mochi, but for some reason chooses not to do so. On my turn, I did play Arven for 4 Seal Stone and Electric Generator, but of course, because I'm item locked, I can't play the Generator. I think I should have gotten Bravery Charm there actually to protect the Magnemite instead, but either way, I didn't have an energy to attach again to Iron Hands EX, so all I can do is Insta Charge. On his turn, he does finally use Toxin Powder to activate the Mochi on the Badoo, using Itchy Pollen to KO with the bonus damage on my Magnemite. On my turn, I still can't do anything significant with no access to Electric Generator, so I have to promote Miraidon EX whilst I attach to Raikou V, and I Insta Charge for a 3rd turn in a row. He's able to take the KO on my active with Terapagos EX without needing to poison himself, so now he is at 3 prize cards ahead with a fully set up board, including Pheasantipity EX, Area 0, Cloth as a backup attacker. Realizing this game is pretty much over, I just scoop it up and head to game 3, where I know I'll be going second again and have a way better chance. For game 3, he actually gets a couple of mulligans, but gets to start with the Oranguru V once again, and the Precious Trolley is not prized this time around. He gets fully set up and finishes his turn with Brute Bonnet with a capsule attached to it in the active. Between the mulligans and my starting hand, I was able to get 3 Electric Generators in my hand without even needing to play a supporter for turn. I end up getting a full board with Pikachu EX in Area 0, and an Iron Hands fully powered up with Boss's Orders to take down his Squawk ability for 3 prize cards as my first KO. His response was taking a KO with Terapagos EX with a Binding Mochi attached on my Iron Hands alongside an Iono on my huge hand, but I think here is where he made a mistake, since he took the KO with damage instead of in between turns poison. Now I can not only draw cards with Mew EX, but also I have access to Pheasantipity EX for even more draw power. If he had benched like 1 less Pokemon or hadn't attached the Mochi, he would have been able to KO my Iron Hands with the Terapagos, with the poison damage taking the knockout in between turns. All I do on my next turn is take the KO on the Terapagos with the Raikou V to put me down to a single prize card remaining. And I also had Magneton in play at this point, so I only needed to find Boss's Orders to close out the game in case he had Blood Moon Ursaluna EX to take the next KO, which he did, but didn't Iono me again that turn. So all I had to do was use Magneton, power my Miraidon EX, bench Lumineon V to grab Boss's Orders, and take a KO on the Oranguru V on the bench to win game 3 and advance to the finals. My finals opponent was Mauricio Pettino, with whom there was a funny interaction before the tournament. He tagged me on Twitter on a post saying Gouging Fire was a good deck, and people only thought it was bad because they played it like a beat stick and not like a toolbox, to which I promptly replied that maybe the deck just kind of sucked. But here he was, with the deck in the finals of the regionals. It actually beat Caleb in the asymmetrical top cut match, so I talked with Caleb about the matchup beforehand and came to the conclusion that an early Iron Hands with a Bravery Charm was probably the best way to open up the games, as it couldn't be as easily one-hit KO'd and could repeatedly attack turn after turn with the Arm Pressed or the Amp You Very Much. In game 1, he won the coin flip and chose to go second. I started Mew EX versus his Gouging Fire EX. I started off with Ultra Balling from Miraidon EX and getting Magnemite and Rotom V down with Tandem Unit. Then I whiffed an Electric Generator, hitting no energy, and just had to attach to my Miraidon EX, retreat into Magnemite to avoid giving him a 2-prize lead, and use the Insta Charge. Mauricio got off to a pretty good start on his first turn, getting Fire Energy into the discard pile, using Trekking Shoes a couple of times, and was able to Professor Sada and attach to KO my Magnemite with the 60 damage from the Gouging Fire. I had to assume he learned a bit from playing the matchup against Caleb in Asymmetrical Cut, but also he must have seen my list for my stream by now and knew that I didn't run the Zapdos at all, so I couldn't KO a full HP Gouging Fire EX in the active with a Miraidon EX. He also limited his bench to a single Pokemon, Entei V, to prevent Raikou V with Area 0 from taking a KO as well. On my turn, I ended up going for a Tandem Unit for Iron Hands EX, Nest Balling for Pheasantipity EX, and with the help of the previous Insta Charge and Flip the Script, I'm able to get another Electric Generator, but I only hit 1 energy. I then force Seal Stone for another, hitting 2 energy this time, attach the Bravery Charm to the Iron Hands EX, and go with the plan to pressure with Arm Press. Mauricio has his secret box, which gives him another Professor Sada, 4 Sealstone, and Nest Ball, which lets him find another Gouging Fire EX. Sada's onto them both. He then plays Lost Vacuum to remove my Bravery Charm and KOs me with Blaze Blitz. The Lost Vacuum took me by surprise because I'm sure Caleb would have mentioned it to me, but I think even if I had known he had it, I couldn't have done anything differently, and he could have easily just benched Monkey Dory and attached to that instead of the second Gouging Fire EX to KO me through the Bravery Charm anyways. At this point, I'm down 3 electric generators and Magneton and have a single energy in play. I armor for my last electric generator, hit 2 energy off it, but after flip the script, I have no energy in hand at all to even arm press again, and I have to scoop and go to game number 2. In game 2, I choose to go second, starting Pikachu EX against his Gouging Fire. He benches Squawkabilly EX, uses Jet Energy to bring it to the active, and Squawk and Seize away a couple of Dark Energy and a Sada. He then S-Balls for Entei, retreats into it, uses the Fleet-Footed, and passes. I start my turn immediately using Iron Bundle, to which he immediately promotes a Gouging Fire EX. I then Nest Ball for the Squawkabilly EX because my hand is very mediocre. Bench Mew, and then Squawk and Seize with the Squawkabilly, with a crucial card in my hand being the Night Stretcher that I have to end up discarding. Off the Squawkabilly EX, I get a Nest Ball to grab Rotom V and Magnemite through the tandem unit of Miraidon, attach energy to Miraidon EX, and then Insta-Charge to end my turn. Mauricio starts his turn immediately switch carding into Entei to Fleet-Footed, which is a big tell that he doesn't have much going on for him, and all he does is attach fire to the active Entei and passes. I now have a much better hand, and I'm able to force Sealstone for Area 0 to have a bigger bench, and then tandem unit for Raichu V and Iron Hands EX. I have 2 electric generators to play. First one gets 2, and they both go to the Raikou V. Then I retreat into it to use Fleet-Footed, and I decide to go Boss KO the Squawkabilly EX for my first 2 prize cards. He's then able to bench and use Fezandipity EX to get another Gouging Fire EX in play. After Professor Sada, he attaches Entei V and takes a KO on my Raikou V, tying things up 4-4. Going into my turn, I'm able to build more resources in my hand thanks to Fezandipity and the Flip the Script, and I play Secret Box to further thin my deck, grabbing Boss, Bravery Charm, and another electric generator. I then play all 3 electric generators, hitting 2 energy on the first onto a Miraidon EX, 2 energy on the second onto Iron Hands EX, and 1 more on the third, putting it onto the Raichu V. I then Boss's orders, KO his Fezandipity EX, leaving me with 2 prize cards left to go. Now at this point, since my Night Stretcher was gone, having Raichu in play was actually a mistake. If he could Boss KO it, I would have no way to take another KO next turn if he didn't bench another liability. However, despite having a huge hand, he just draws for turn, thinks for a few seconds before scooping and sending us to a third and final game to decide who would be the Merida Regional Champion. 2 games in, and I have a better understanding of the matchup, and my thoughts of how I win this was to hope he puts down some kind of liabilities in play, or to force the liability in play like Fez or Luminion. I knew I need to take aggressive big KOs, which meant Raichu had to be my go-to attacker, and I potentially need to use Raichu twice if possible to take down 2 Gouging Fire EXs or a Gouging Fire and an Entei V, and force those supporting Pokemon into play so he can chain attacks himself. In game 3, he chooses to go second. I start with Pikachu EX against his Entei V. I Ultra Ball to grab Squawkabilly, bench Magnemite and Rotom V, attach 4 Sealstone to Rotom. I then bench Miraidon EX, tandem unit to check my deck, but fail it as I don't want my Raichu V to get KO'd on his first turn just in case, and just Insta-Charge to get more resources. Mauricio ends up using Earthen Vessel for 2 Fire Energy, then uses Fleet-Footed, attaches Entei V, and to mine and everyone's surprise, passes the turn. I know this is my tournament now. I played on Area 0, get Iron Hands EX and Raichu V into play, Ultra Ball for Magneton, bench Latias, use Magneton's ability to power up Raichu V, and then attach an energy from hand to Raichu V and Dynamic Spark, 240 damage, and the game by KOing Mauricio's only Pokemon in play to win the tournament. The crowd in Merida went nuts after I won. I'm very appreciative of all the support I received. It was honestly kind of overwhelming, and not even just after the final, but throughout the whole weekend. I don't think I've ever taken more pictures or signed as many things as I did at Merida. So a big thank you to the Mexican Pokemon community for the amazing support. This win means I am the player with the most regional wins in the history of the game. It's not an official title or anything. I think it's a great milestone to achieve, especially in the modern age of Pokemon, where tournaments are getting bigger and more difficult to win with each passing season, not just because of the size, but also the quality of player is increasing as well. Despite getting my 8th regional title, my motivation and vision for my trajectory in this game is not just about winning trophies or accolades, it's about getting better. I'm unsatisfied with my preparation for Merida, and I definitely want to improve upon that in the future, doing something similar in terms of playing the deck I'm working on. I want to be picking decks sooner in advance so that way I have more time to play with it. I don't care too much that I'll be leaking my exact deck list to anyone who wants it or close to my exact deck list. That is the plan for the rest of the season, a new and different process, which so far has worked out quite well. All right, here it is, my first place medal from Merida, putting it right alongside my first place medals from San Antonio and Stockholm from last season. Down there, the 4 trophies from my regional wins in the modern era, pre-COVID. I started doing the medals post-COVID. And then back here, I got my first ever regional trophy of all time, which is also my favorite trophy and the nicest of all of my trophies. It is glass with a Garchomp etched into it. They definitely don't make them like they used to. That is for sure. But yeah, this is my first time making a video like this. So let me know what y'all think about it. Things you think could be improved. Or if you want to hear any other stories from any of my other major tournament wins throughout the years. And I'll catch y'all in the next one.